he admitted during the redirect, and I'm going to dare say verbatim, we did what we did to him so he wouldn't do that to anyone else. Now, what did that first former officer mean by that? Well, he went on this whole tangent with regards to the female, and all I can do is assume that it had to do with the false accusation of December of 2012, because the truth is they came to that location where I was at and planned an assault on me, and they were very clear when they were assaulting me while I was handcuffed from behind why they were doing it, to teach me a lesson and to shut me up. Now, there's a whole backstory with regards to the female, why I was meeting with her, audio recording, always meeting her in public, and real quick, one quick sentence, to vindicate myself as well as get information about the sex trafficking, sexual assault, or sexual abuse, or whatever you want to call it, of these vulnerable women. Because after I terminated my second lawyer, I took over the trial proper, and then I found out that there was an agreement between the first two lawyers and the Crown prosecutor to withhold my evidence of what I was doing with the female and all the audio recordings and everything else. Hello, it's May 2022, and I just finished watching another video by Steve Ladle, or also known as Ladle's Law, and I've highlighted him and mentioned him in a few recent videos. In this video, he was talking about a case from last year where, I guess I think it was 2019, an officer was convicted of assault and was jailed. What had happened, just the gist of it, the suspect had robbed a cell phone store, ran, they had to chase him down. The suspect eventually surrendered himself by laying on the ground with his hands out and everything else. And this officer decided to tase him, and then after his partner handcuffed him, tase him again, and then proceeded to kick him. And it's your classic cover-up type of case where his police reports and everything were not accurate. And what makes this case interesting is that there was a surveillance camera that had caught the whole thing, recorded everything. And so the trial judge trying the officer found him guilty and sentenced him to jail. And that's basically the gist of it. Now, I would like to say that this judge did the right thing. And unlike my case, which I'm going to get into in a moment, I'm going to bring up some highlights of that. The judge had, when he was sentencing him, convicted him, basically rebutted line by line what the officer said to what the video surveillance camera recorded. And this type of thing goes on all the time, but what we see here, for example, in Ontario, Toronto, the difference being what happens in Calgary, Alberta, possibly all of Alberta, but I digress. So this officer who was convicted and jailed lost his job, and then was basically crying about, this damaged his reputation and everything else. Well, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So he tried to cover everything up and even testified, lied during his testimony to the whole thing. And then the video evidence showed something completely different. Now, I'm going to bring up some highlights of my matter in Calgary, Alberta. And there's I guess we can call it two parts to it. Now, when the first former officer testified during the redirect. Now, a redirect, for anyone who doesn't know, is the Crown prosecutor's witness will answer questions by the Crown prosecutor. Then the defense asks questions, which would have been my first lawyer, of the officer. And then when that's done, the Crown prosecutor then has the opportunity to follow up, ask some more questions, or maybe clarify a few things. And that's called a redirect. So during the redirect, the former officer, although he kind of, sort of went along with whatever the police report he wrote in his police reports, but he admitted during the redirect, and I'm going to dare say verbatim, we did what we did to him so he wouldn't do that to anyone else. Now, I'm just going to interject here. I remember at that moment, the trial judge for the alleged charges of allegedly assaulting a police officer and obstruction looked at me as if, like, I'm doomed. Now, what did that first former officer mean by that? Well, he went on this whole tangent with regards to the female, and all I can do is assume that it had to do with the false accusation of December of 2012. And he went on this whole tirade with this. Now, even the Crown prosecutor, when I did my Section 11B charter argument to be tried within a reasonable time, citing R versus Jordan, said that he doesn't understand why this case became so complicated. And it became complicated because the truth is, they came to that location where I was at and planned an assault on me. And they were very clear when they were assaulting me while I was handcuffed from behind why they were doing it. To teach me a lesson and to shut me up. Now, there's a whole backstory with regards to the female, why I was meeting with her, audio recording, always meeting her in public, and real quick, one quick sentence to vindicate myself as well as get information about the sex trafficking, sexual assault, or sexual abuse, or whatever you want to call it, of these vulnerable women at this mental health organization, which the provincial health care, Alberta Health Services, knew what was going on. And I'm going to say it again. I can only suspect they knew before I told them, but once I told them, they knew and did nothing. And they sponsored that organization 60%. But I digress. So during the redirect, he makes that statement. Now, the first time I got the trial transcript, which would have been his testimony, the whole redirect is missing. Now, the trial judge of this matter, throughout the proceedings over the years, did state several times that he's reserving the right to basically change transcripts. Never heard of that before, but that's that. Now, when I realized the whole redirect was missing, I was telling everyone, the lawyer, I was saying, the whole redirect is missing. Oh, you're crazy. Okay, that's everyone's default is, you're crazy. And over the years, I tried telling everyone, even various governing bodies within the legal system and everything else in the province of Alberta, nobody listened. Like, watch my words. One person said, I'm only upset because I'm not getting the ruling that I want. Of course, I'd be upset because I'm innocent. I got through that fairly easy, didn't I? So he admitted to beating me, which would turn out for no reason, because after I terminated my second lawyer, I took over the trial proper, and then I found out that there was an agreement between the first two lawyers and the Crown Prosecutor to withhold my evidence of what I was doing with the female and all the audio recordings and everything else. I didn't even know that. And the second lawyer had said to me, we're going to introduce it. We're going to introduce it. I'm like, okay. I told him, I said, this is your case. I'm not going to step on your toes. And then when it got to the 11th hour, I realized what was happening. And then I went to fire him at the courthouse during a recess of the trial. The judge said, you have to talk to your client because you're, and the nonverbal communication going back and forth. He assured me, and then I finally, the next court appearance, I terminated him right there. The judge was very upset about that. So I introduced all my evidence, and now they have nothing. They were banking on the fact that I allegedly resisted and assaulted them and did all this craziness because I was either was in the process of doing, or going to do some crime of some sort, and I don't even know what, but that's not the point. So this Toronto officer lied on the stand, whereas the former officer in my case admitted to everything, and everything was scrubbed. Now, and then this carries on when the trial continued. So that was in, I believe it was November of 2013 when the first former officer testified. I believe it was February, the adjournment, Crown's adjournment, it was February 2015 when the trial continued. They had plenty of time to scrub and rewrite everything. And that leads on to more tangents of the same. But now they realize they have to change everything, whatever. So here's the officer admitting and they just scrub everything. They covered it up. The courts covered it up. The judge covered it up. Judge Cummings. He shouldn't be a judge. He's incompetent. No, he's not incompetent. He knows very well what he's doing. Very well. But now this comes into the part two, the second part of my troubles there, where the senior counselor for the city of Calgary had threatened my second lawyer. And his influence with the trial judge, because Judge Cummings, based on a good friend of his, told me that he said, Bill Cummings is a criminal judge. He has no criminal law experience, or minimal, if any. I'll never forget that conversation. So we have political interference, and that was the whole point of that. We have the former senior counsel of the city of Calgary directly interfering with the criminal trial. So going back to these transcripts, it wasn't until the fourth lawyer, after I filed all my appeal materials for both the Queen's Bench appeal as well as the Court of Appeal in Alberta, I had figured they can't screw it up, but obviously they did. Actually, the Court's Bench appeal judge, the one that I had seized, was totally on my side. And then we had to adjourn it like 4 months to wait for him, and I was willing to wait because he was on my side, literally. And that morning, just before court started, the third lawyer that I had said they switched judges that morning. I said, why? And she's like, this is bizarre. Isn't it bizarre? Keep in mind, my post-traumatic stress is just eating away at me and growing because I'm having to deal with all this, but I'm still trying to keep everything together in my head. So here we have, the term just popped out of my head. like misuse of justice or whatever. Just poof, just popped out of my head. But just remembering everything, it's difficult for me to talk about these things. And the more I complain to governing bodies, even the judge, the trial judge, and everyone else, the more they looked at me as the bad guy. So I guess what you can take from this is the difference between, for example, and I'm not saying everywhere is perfect, but we see, for example, the difference between Ontario courts dealing with police and the Alberta courts dealing with the police. Night and day contrast difference of the corruption in the province of Alberta, specifically in the city of Calgary. And I'm the one carrying the burden of injustice. All because these women approached me, and actually there was at least one male for help. They want to get involved. Like, I told them what they need to do, but the primary female of the story, I guess, got upset because I wouldn't be the front man for them, which I couldn't be. And then I got dragged into it personally. Now, who was behind the false allegation, and I don't even know what it's about, I have no idea. I have some suspicions. I'm looking at old notes and videos that I made at that time. It reminds me of those suspicions. So yeah, I just want to contrast the difference between the province of Alberta and Ontario. Again, I'm not saying Ontario is perfect, but by no means do we see in Ontario what happens out there. Ontario is by far, and I know there's going to be people watching, possibly from Ontario, going, "You're so wrong. I had a bad experience." You know something? Yeah, you had a bad experience. It doesn't mean anything. It means you had a bad experience. But even from a professional perspective, in my life prior to now, here it's the best, I would say, in Canada. So I'm going to leave it at that. I want you to think about the officer of my case admitting to it, them scrubbing it, the trial judge being influenced, heavily influenced by the former senior counsel of the city of Calgary. And I'm still the one suffering. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me all the time, "When is it going to get easier? When you die."